why is there such a difference between the two? Why are some going to the extremes on one wants game-based training and one wants individual? And is there a need for both, or should we just do one or the other?
I think as well, again, here, I think it's a combination of factors. Number one being, personal agenda. People, want to promote the extreme, doing everything one sort of way, when in reality, anyone, like anything in life, you need balance. I've always people always associated me with being everything away from the game. Was that reality? I always say, if you're doing a team session, the majority of your session should be an opposed environment. The problem we have now is that unopposed has almost become like a dirty word. And sometimes, and often it is actually mindless, a lot of passing drills and stuff like that. So when we do, but unopposed work is also very important, and it's about, things like ball mastery and 1v1 training and weak foot training are really key important parts of player development. But I mean, it is really a process of to do that properly and how that fits in. I think in the modern climate, in the modern narrative, which we have now, where everybody's talking about constraints-based coaching, I think there's a bit of a breakdown in language, or in almost a cultural problem here, where people promoting the constraints-based coaching within the FA, for instance, don't really understand the quality and the importance of coaching ball mastery and 1v1 specific training. So we're not, we see often these people, especially from other sports like hockey and rugby and all these people who are involved in the debate, quite rightly, they're saying, don't be having your players be doing passing drills in mindless repetition. That's the problem. And then they associate all unopposed work like that, when reality, quality unopposed work is anything but mindful. It's deliberate practice, and it's a key fundamental part of elite player development. And I separate that, I underline that, if you like, because obviously my experience working 10 years at Chelsea and Tottenham in the academy, and traveling around the world looking at some of the best academies in the world, and in any other ball related sport, this sort of training is really important, is really pivotal, but also plays a part. So I want to say that particularly as well, as saying, look, unopposed work is really important, but obviously opposed work is the main, and should always be the main body of your work. So if you're asking me, when I was, for instance, when I was at Chelsea, 20% of my session would be unopposed, 80% would be an opposed game-based constraints, if you like. But that 20% is really important, all right? It's really important if you want to produce technical players. So that's really important, and it's the value of understanding how to do that properly and how that fits into your team training. And then also understanding how you can then develop and support players to have that mindset to go and work by themselves, all right? Even if it's just kicking the ball up against the wall, there's still merit about that. That's still an important part of development.
I'm glad you mentioned the percentage, because that can help, I think, paint a better picture for coaches that are thinking one way or the other in terms of the extremes. Interestingly enough, I just read an article, I think it was by Ford and all, about soccer coaches, and they interviewed and watched guys perform sessions, and they were still finding that it was like 60 to 70% of the training sessions were still on some type of either training form, which was just isolated, unopposed training, fitness, jumping around, doing things other than the game. And what you're alluding to here is that we should be spending it in the opposite. It should be a higher level of training in games and a little bit of having the isolated methods involved. My question then is going to be, how do we know, or when is it that we should probably start to move them into different isolated methods? In other words, at what point in time do we check for the understanding that it's ingrained in them now? They're using it. How do we know that we can move on to another isolated method, or do we just keep doing passing every time they show up for training? Well,
that's a great question, and I suppose this is the whole point about coaching. It's got to be game related, and you've got to take your inspiration from your players. All right. So you look at your players and think about what they got to do. And, I talk a lot about, I call myself a specialist in the foundation phase with the younger players, because that's where I really focus my career, even though I work with players across the age grade and adult pros as well. So at the younger age groups, it's particularly more pertinent to work on those technical things away from the game, and sometimes slow it down and let them build a relationship with the ball and understand how it works off the ball. And, you know, you talked about passing. It's just like, for me, passing is one of the easier bits in football. You know, if you're going to generalize, the difficult bit of football is staying on the ball, manipulating the ball, protecting the ball, and being able to dominate the 1v1. This is the real, you know, that's probably the most difficult thing in football. Obviously, we still want to encourage players who can play with their head up and pass and make forward passes. But if you look at the best players in the world, the ones who are the exciting ones, these are the guys who can stay on the ball, dominate 1v1, and make things happen. So that's why I think it's so important to have an emphasis on that. Now, you talked about when do you know when to move on. So I think you just, like I said, you know, like I say, when I was very lucky to work with some of the best young players in the world football, probably working at these two academies. All right, so you have to have a methodology and a framework from which you work to, but many of the outliers will slip out of that anyway. Many of the outliers will just have great technique anyway, and they won't need to do that unopposed work. All right, but you have to work with that. So, I mean, in answer to your question, inspiration from your players, you've got, I'd say, don't spend too much work on passing. You're going to tell important things about, especially the younger age groups, are ball mastery and 1v1, and really developing that mastery of the ball and being able to stay on it.